content is for educational purposes only, drawing from our professional and educational experiences and opinions. Please use this information at your own personal or professional discretion. We are not liable for anything you do with this information.
Good evening. Welcome to Ask the Lady Electrical Inspector podcast. I am your host, Tabatha L. In tonight's episode, I will answer questions from the electrical industry about my journey from electrician to electrical inspector. I will share my personal experience, including my job training, educational background, and the events that led me to this role. With decades of hands-on experience, I will discuss the insights gained from my time as an electrician and my current position as an electrical inspector. By combining these perspectives, I aim to provide valuable information that bridges the gap between electrical contractors and inspectors, fostering better communication and understanding for more successful project outcomes. We will explore common challenges that can lead to failed inspections, discuss practical solutions, and examine how contractors can better prepare for inspections while ensuring code compliance and electrical safety. As always, I welcome the electrical industry to submit questions and raise concerns about real-world issues faced in the field. I will share practical approaches to overcoming obstacles and improving the inspection process for everyone involved. I hope the information I provide will lend credibility to eager learners in the electrical field. Join us for an informative discussion that offers a comprehensive understanding of electrical work from both the electrical inspector and electrician viewpoint. Ask the Lady Electrical Inspector, where experience, education, and practical knowledge comes together to support a safer and more successful electrical industry. The first question: could you please describe your professional journey within the electrical industry? Specifically, what motivated you to pursue a career as an electrician and how this experience ultimately led to your current role as an electrical inspector? My journey into the electrical industry began in 1989 when I enlisted in the United States Navy after completing the Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, also known as the ASVAB test. This test determined my military enlistment eligibilities and helped identify a career path that matched my abilities and my interests. After reviewing my ASVAB results, the role of electrician mate was described, which involved operating, maintaining, troubleshooting, and repairing electrical power systems on naval vessels. This responsibility of ensuring continuous electrical power captured my interest, and I chose this path without hesitation. My military experience was pivotal. I received several awards and accommodations and was nominated for a Navy Achievement Medal, which was a tremendous honor. I proudly served until I was honorably discharged in December of 1994. In May of 1995, I began my electrical career through an apprenticeship with Local 1 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in St. Louis as a commercial and industrial electrician. After years of training and practical experience, I earned my journeyman wireman status in 1999. Throughout my career as an electrician, I have worked on numerous projects in the St. Louis and Illinois region, including the Chrysler plant, Ford plant, and the General Motors assembly plant, the Sioux power plant, Merrimack power plant, the MSD facility, Missouri Water Companies, ConocoPhillips, Shell's refinery, Anheuser-Busch Brewery, Busch Stadium. I worked on hospitals, schools, gas stations, office buildings, manufacturing facilities, and many commercial and industrial projects. In 2009, I faced a layoff during a challenging economic period, and during this time period, I received a 40% service-connected disability rating from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Instead of viewing this as a setback, I saw it as an opportunity to further my education and prepare for the next chapter of my career. I enrolled at Rankin Technical College, where I earned an associate's degree. While attending school, I learned of an opening for an electrical position. I applied, I was selected, and began a new career as an electrical code enforcement and public safety. Motivated by my success and desire for continual professional growth, I remained at Rankin and later earned a Bachelor of Science in Applied Management, Electrical Construction Design and Management. As an electrical inspector, I obtained nationally recognized certification and successfully completed examinations administered by the International Association of Electrical Inspectors. These credentials, combined with decades of hands-on experience, have allowed me to serve both the electrical industry and the public by promoting safe and code-compliant installations. I am now beginning another exciting chapter in my professional journey as an electrical instructor for the Electrical Board of Missouri and Illinois. This opportunity allows me to combine my military experience, electrical trade expertise, inspection knowledge, and educational background to help train and mentor the next generation of electrical professionals. I am proud of the path that brought me here, from the Navy electrician mate to journeyman electrician to electrical inspector and now an electrical instructor. Throughout my career, I have remained committed to a lifelong learning, professionalism, and electrical safety. I look forward to sharing the practical knowledge, real-world experience, and lessons learned over decades in the electrical industry with those who are beginning their own journey. The next question: as an electrical inspector, what's the biggest disconnect you see between the way contractors approach their work in the field and what inspectors are looking for during an inspection? One of the most significant disconnects I observe between contractors in the field and electrical inspectors is the difference between experience-based practices and current code requirements. Many contractors possess decades of electrical experience, often combined with knowledge that has been passed down through generations. Throughout my career, one of the most common statements I have heard is, "I have always done it this way." Sometimes it's followed by, "My father did it this way," or "My grandfather did it this way." I have tremendous respect for the experience and the craftsmanship and practical knowledge behind those statements. However, the reality is that the electrical industry is constantly evolving. Technology changes, equipment advances, installation methods improve, and most importantly, safety standards continue to develop. Simply having years of experience does not automatically guarantee that an installation meets today's safety requirements. As an inspector, my responsibility is not to determine whether a particular method has worked in the past. My obligation is to verify compliance with the minimum safety standards currently adopted and enforced. A contractor may state that they have installed something the same way for 20 years without a problem. But inspections are based on the codes in effect today, not on tradition or historical practices. The concept of grandfathering is often brought up in these discussions. In some circumstances, existing installations may be permitted to remain as originally installed. However, once the equipment is modified, replaced, or upgraded, current code requirements apply. Just because something has been done a certain way for years does not necessarily mean it was safe or most compliant or the most compliant method. The National Electrical Code is revised every 3 years for a good reason. Those changes are not arbitrary. They result from advances in technology, lessons learned from accidents and failures, product innovations, field experience, and input from industry professionals across the country. The goal has always remained the same: improving electrical safety for installers, property owners, occupants, and the public. That is why continuing education is important. Whether you are an electrician, a contractor, inspector, engineer, or designer, relying solely on knowledge acquired years ago is no longer significant. We all have a professional responsibility to remain current with the code changes and industry developments. I strongly encourage contractors and electricians to attend code updated seminars, continuing education courses, manufacturer training programs, and industry conferences whenever possible. Even an annual refresher course can reveal changes that significantly affect field installations. When contractors and inspectors share an understanding of both the code requirements and the intent behind them, the inspection process becomes far more efficient and far less adversary. Instead of viewing inspection as a conflict between experience and enforcement, they become what they were always intending to be: a collaboration effort focused on safety and compliance. Ultimately, inspectors and contractors share the same objective: to ensure that the electrical installations are safe, reliable, code compliant. Bridging the gap between experience and current code requirements begin with respecting practical knowledge while recognizing the importance of continuous education and staying current. The most successful professionals are not those who say, "I've always done it this way," but those who ask, "What is the safest and most compliant way to do it today?" Next question. What are the 3 most frequent deficiencies or mistakes that lead to failed or delayed electrical inspections, and what can contractors do to prevent them? In my experience as an electrical inspector, the top 3 issues that most frequently lead to failed or delayed inspections are: number 1, assuming approved plans automatically equal code compliance. Number 2, failing to follow listing requirements and manufacturer's instructions. Number 3, calling for an inspection before the work is complete. Number 1, assuming approved plans automatically equal code compliance. One of the most common questions I receive is, why did this job fail inspection when the plans were approved? Many contractors assume that if the electrical plans have been stamped by the engineer of record, approved through plan and review, and accepted by the permitting authorities, then everything shown on those plans must automatically be code compliant. Unfortunately, that is not always the case. The inspection process exists as a system of checks and balances. Engineers, plan reviewers, project managers, contractors, electricians, and inspectors all play a role in ensuring that an installation meets the minimum requirements of the National Electrical Code. Occasionally, some things get overlooked during design, during the plan review, or during the construction process. When an inspector identifies a code violation in the field, it does not become acceptable simply because it appeared on an approved set of plans. If the installation violates the adopted code, it must be corrected. A good example is a fire pump installation. A fire pump are critical life safety equipment and have very specific installation requirements. On one project, the required protection for the fire pump conductors were overlooked during the design and the construction process. The conductors were required to be encased in concrete, but they were not. At that point, the issue cannot simply be ignored because the plans were approved. The installation must be brought into compliance either by properly encasing the conduits that have the conductors inside in concrete, or by utilizing another approved method such as MI cable where permitted. The purpose of these requirements is to ensure that the fire pump remains operational during a fire for as long as possible, helping protect lives and property. These situations often create significant delays because correcting them requires redesign, additional labor, and coordination among multiple parties. What can contractors do to prevent this? Carefully review approved plans before construction begins. Verify that the field conditions match the approved design. Communicate potential conflicts early. Remember that approved plans must still comply with the adopted electrical codes. Number 2, not following the listing requirements and manufacturer's instructions. Another issue I frequently encounter involves listed equipment being installed in a manner that does not comply with the manufacturer's instructions. A common example is the newer and smaller recessed LED can lights with remote drivers. Architects often prefer these fixtures because of their clean appearance and their compact size. However, the installation must still comply with both the listing requirements and the National Electrical Code. The challenge arises when drivers and thermal protectors, wiring splices, or other components installed above a finished drywall ceiling in a manner that makes future servicing difficult or impossible. Just because a manufacturer sells a LED can light does not automatically mean every installation method is acceptable. The installer must demonstrate that the wiring and components remain accessible after the installation, that the manufacturer's instructions have been followed. Some manufacturers specifically requires a minimum length of lead conductors to remain accessible after the installation. If those instructions are not followed, the responsibility ultimately falls on the electrician. As technology continues to become smaller and more compact, these accessibility issues are becoming increasingly common. Contractors who fail to carefully review manufacturer's instructions often experience delays when inspectors question whether the equipment can be safely maintained and serviced in the future. What can a contractor do to prevent this? Read the manufacturer's instructions before the installation. Verify accessibility requirements before ceilings and walls are closed. Confirm that all equipment is installed in accordance with its listing and labeling. Do not assume previous installation methods apply to new technology. Number 3, calling for inspections before the work is complete. The third and probably the most preventable issue is requesting an inspection before the project is actually ready. I encountered this situation multiple times a week. For example, a contractor may request an inspection to energize a new electrical service on a large commercial project. When I arrived, I discovered that the electrical room has no doors, has no windows. The windows are missing throughout the building. The building is not weather tight. These are conditions that must be corrected before the service can be approved. Electrical rooms must be secured from unauthorized personnel and access. The building must provide adequate protection for the electrical equipment. Safety is always the primary concern. When I speak with the contractor in these situations, I often hear the same explanation. The general contractor is pushing me to call for this inspection. My response is always the same. You control your permit. If you know the project is not ready, why request the inspection? Too often, inspections are requested simply because someone wants the inspector to tell the general contractor that the project isn't ready, that the service cannot be energized. That wastes everyone's time and can create additional delays. Before scheduling any inspections, contractors should walk the project, verify that all required work is completed, confirm that the equipment is properly installed, that the windows and doors are all in, and ensure that the site is truly ready for an electrical inspection. What contractors can do to prevent this? As mentioned, most failed inspections are not caused by a lack of skill or experience. More often, they result from assumptions, overlooking details, or requesting inspections before the project is actually ready. The contractors who constantly pass inspections understand three principles. Approved plans still have to comply with the adopted codes. Listed equipment must be installed according to its listing and the manufacturer's instructions, and never request an inspection until the work is completed. When contractors and inspectors work together with these principles in mind, projects move more efficiently. Delays are reduced and everyone achieves the same goal: safe, reliable, and code-compliant electrical installations. Next question. Electrical contractors often work in several municipalities, each with their own adopted codes and local amendments. What's the one thing contractors should always verify before calling an inspection to avoid unnecessary delays or corrections? Most contractors understand that they need to post a permit on the job site and have the approved plans available for review. Those are important requirements and should always be part of the inspection preparations. However, one issue that frequently causes delays is a mismatch between the scope of work listed on the permit and the work that was actually performed. For example, I may arrive at a residence to perform an electrical inspection. I review the permit and I see that the scope of work states a kitchen remodel. Based on that permit, I'm expecting to inspect electrical work associated with a kitchen remodel. However, when I walk through the home, I discovered that the living room, dining room, bathrooms, bedrooms, and basement have also been remodeled. At that point, we have what is called a permit discrepancy. As an inspector, I can only inspect the work that is covered by the permit. If the actual work exceeds the permit scope, the project may be delayed. It will be delayed. while the contractor obtained the proper permit reflecting the full intent of the work performed. Many contractors view this simply as paperwork issue, but it can create much larger problems later. For example, imagine that the project is completed and the homeowner decides to sell the house a year later. During a reoccupancy inspection, the inspector noticed that multiple areas of the home have been remodeled. The inspector then reviews the permit history and discovers that the only permit on record was for a kitchen remodel. At that point, important questions begin to arise. When was the bathroom remodeled? When was the basement finished? When were the bedrooms done? Were permits obtained? Were inspections performed? If there is no permit history documenting that work, it may become impossible to verify that the installation was properly inspected and approved. As a result, the homeowner may face costly delays, additional inspections, or corrective work through no fault of their own. This is why it is so important for contractors to accurately describe the work being performed when applying for permits. A permit is more than just a piece of paper. It becomes a part of a permanent record for that property. Before requesting an inspection, I recommend that every contractor ask the following questions. Am I properly licensed to perform work in that municipality? Is the permit posted and visible on the job site? Do I have an approved set of plans available? Does the scope of work listed on the permit accurately match the work that was performed? Have any additional changes occurred since the permit was issued? If the scope of work has expanded, have I updated the permit accurately? Taking a few extra minutes to verify these items can save days or even worse, weeks of delays later. At the end of the day, inspectors are not trying to create obstacles. We are trying to ensure that the work being performed matches the approved permit and can be properly documented for the protection of the contractor, the homeowner, and the future property owner. A permit should tell the complete story of the work being performed. When the permit, the plans, and the installation all align, inspections proceed much more smoothly and everyone benefits. Next question. Can you share a recent inspection example where an experienced contractor was caught off guard by a code requirement or installation detail and what others can learn from it? One issue that catches even experienced contractors off guard isn't always a wiring mistake. It's not fully knowing who is actually performing electrical work on your job site. When I arrive at a job site, as the electrical inspector, one of the first questions I ask is who is performing the work on this project. That includes not only the electrical contractor installing the power for the service, but also anyone performing electrical work. Data, fire alarm, security systems, audio video, temperature control, building automations, any low voltage systems. You will be surprised how often I hear, I'm not sure. I don't know who's doing that part. That answer alone can create serious problems and serious delays. One of the most commonly overlooked details on larger projects is assuming that every contractor performing electrical work has the proper permit and authorization to be on site. Many contractors assume someone else has verified that. The general contractor assumed that the electrical contractor has it covered. The electrical contractor assumed that the owner handled it. The owner assumed the subcontractor took care of it. But in this industry, assumptions are where delays begin. In many cases, the electrical contractor becomes the most visible licensed trade on that project. So if another company performs electrical work without a permit and no one catches it, that can create complications for everyone involved. Let's look at it at a real world scenario. A contractor installed power on a project correctly and completes their scope of work. Later, another company comes in to install low voltage systems, security equipment, or controls without obtaining the required permits. Months later, an issue arises, maybe a system failure, property damage, or even a fire. Investigators begin to review permits and inspection records. The question becomes, who is the last documented licensed electrical contractor on that project? Often, the contractor who installed the power is the one responsible. Even if they had nothing to do with the unpermitted work, they may still find themselves answering questions from the owner, insurance companies, attorneys, investigators, simply because their name appeared in the official record. That's why I always tell contractors, protecting your license include paying attention to who else is working around you. This is not about policing other trades. It's about professional awareness and protecting everyone involved. If you notice another company performing electrical work, verify whether they have the proper permits. If you are unsure, ask the general contractor or inform the inspector. Think of it as a system of checks and balances. Everyone on the project shares responsibility for keeping it safe, legal, and properly documented. Another situation I frequently see involves out-of-town contractors. A company may bring in a contractor from another city or state because of a specialty or experience or competitive pricing. The challenge is that some of these contractors are unfamiliar with local licensing rules, permitting requirements, and inspection processes, or jurisdictional requirements. They may assume that because they are licensed elsewhere, they can simply begin work. Then the project stalls and become delayed. For example, if electrical work above a ceiling has not been properly permitted or inspected, that ceiling may not be allowed to be closed. Other trades are then forced to stop while the issue is corrected. What should have been addressed at the beginning of the project suddenly becomes a scheduling conflict affecting multiple contractors and the project owners. At that point, everyone asks the same question: why wasn't this called earlier? The lesson is simple. Know who is working on your project. Know what work they are performing. Verify that the proper permits are in place. And maintain clear communication with the general contractor, the electrician, and the inspector. The most successful projects are not necessarily the ones with the fewest problems. They're the ones where issues are identified early because everyone is communicating and paying attention. As an inspector, I am not just looking for code violations. I also am helping to keep the project moving forward safely and legally. And one of the best ways contractors can protect their license, their clients, and their project timeline is to ensure that everyone performing electrical work is properly licensed, properly permitted, and properly documented. The next question: if you could give one piece of advice to electrical contractors to make the inspection process smoother, faster, and less stressful for everyone involved, what would it be? One of the biggest advantage a contractor can have is having someone present who is familiar with the project and authorized to make minor corrections if necessary on site. No installation is perfect. Even the most experienced electrician occasionally miss small details. It could be a missing bushing, a missing bonding screw, just simple things, a panel schedule that needs updating, or other minor issues that can often be corrected in just a few seconds. When a knowledgeable person is on site, the inspector can address the issue immediately, explain the concerns, and in many cases, the corrections can be made on the spot. Once corrected, the inspector can verify the fix and continue with the inspection. The result is often a pass inspection without additional trips, scheduling delays, or reinspection fees. On the other hand, when no one is available on site, the inspector may identify a deficiency but have no way of communicating it directly or verifying a correction. Even if the issue is minor, inspections may have to fail until the correction is made and a reinspection fee is required, and the inspection has to be rescheduled. Having someone available also demonstrates professionalism and accountability. It shows the inspector that the contractor is eager, takes pride in their work, and is committed to achieving compliance. That kind of approach helps build a working relationship based on communication and mutual respect. I always tell contractors that inspections are not competition between the inspector and the contractor. We are both working towards the same goal, a safe, code-compliant installation that protects the customer and the public. The contractors who consistently experience the smoothest inspections are usually the ones who communicate well, ask questions when needed, and make themselves available during the process. So if you're looking for one simple way to improve your inspection success rate, save time, and reduce stress, make sure a qualified person is on site when the inspector arrives. That small step can prevent delays, eliminate unnecessary reinspection fees, and keep the project moving forward. At the end of the day, good communication between the contractor and the inspection and the inspector benefits everyone, including the customer. Next question. From your experience as an electrical inspector, what questions do contractors most frequently ask in the field, and what do you think prevents some of them from speaking up sooner? One of the most common questions I receive from contractors in the field involve permits and jurisdictional requirements. Since the authority having jurisdiction often covers multiple municipalities, contractors frequently ask why certain municipalities don't perform their own electrical inspections independently, or why multiple permits are required for what appears to be a single project. Some contractors even assume this is simply a way for the municipality to generate additional revenue. From the contractor's perspective, it can sometimes feel like unnecessary duplication of permits. For example, a contractor may be working on a luxury home that includes an elevator. The municipality may require a mechanical permit because the elevator falls under the mechanical inspection process. The contractor then asks, if the mechanical inspector is handling the elevator, why do I need an electrical permit? The answer is that different disciplines are responsible for different parts of the installation. While the mechanical inspector may inspect portions of the elevator system, the National Electrical Code also contains specific requirements for elevators. Article 620 addresses critical electrical components such as wiring methods, disconnecting means, and overcurrent protection. Because electrical systems are inherently part of the installation, the electrical portion must also be reviewed and inspected by the electrical authority having jurisdiction. That is why an electrical permit is often required in addition to a mechanical permit. Another frequent question is, why do I need a separate permit for electrical, a separate permit for plumbing, a separate permit for mechanical and building work when it is all part of the same project? The reason is that each permit authorizes a specific scope of work and ensures that the qualified inspectors are evaluating that particular trade. Building, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical inspectors each have specialized training and are responsible for enforcing different portions of the adopted codes. Over time, many contractors come to understand that permits are not just paperwork. They establish credibility, create an inspection record, and provide documentation that the work was completed in accordance with the adopted codes and the standards. I believe some contractors hesitate to ask questions because they don't want to appear inexperienced. The reality is that many of these questions are valid and important. Code, ordinance, and jurisdictional requirements can vary significantly from one municipality to another, and even experienced contractors can become uncertain when working across multiple jurisdictions. My advice is simple. Ask the questions. Most inspectors would rather answer a question before the work is performed than explain a correction after the fact. Open communication prevents misunderstandings, reduces delays, and keeps everyone aligned. That's one of the goals of Ask the Lady Electrical Inspector, to create a space where contractors, electricians, apprentices, and property owners can feel comfortable asking questions that they may be thinking about but hesitant to say out loud. If you are wondering about permits, inspections, code requirements, licensing, or anything else in the electrical field, chances are someone else has the same questions. And those are actually the kind of topics we will continue covering in the future episodes. The next question. Looking forward, what's one area of electrical code, safety, or contractor-inspector interaction that you feel needs more attention and discussion on this show? Looking ahead, one of the contractor's inspection friction points I'm most passionate about is addressing on this show is communication, professionalism, and mutual respect. One question I am frequently asked when meeting contractors for the first time is, were you ever an electrician? I understand that in many cases, contractors are simply trying to understand an inspector's background. However, sometimes that question is asked in a way that feels like the inspector's knowledge or qualifications are being challenged before any professional conversation ever begins. My perspective is simple. An electrical inspector must have the technical knowledge, the training, and the experience necessary to properly understand the systems being inspected. It would be impossible to effectively perform inspections without a solid understanding of electrical theory, installation methods, code requirements, or safety practice, and industry standards. Think about it this way. If you needed legal advice, you would seek a qualified attorney. If you needed a heart surgeon, you would seek a qualified surgeon. Every profession requires specialized education, training, and experience. Electrical inspections is no different. Another area I'm passionate about, especially as a woman working in this industry, is how communication happens on a job site. For me, the biggest friction point is often not the code itself, it's the tone of the conversation. Most electrical issues can be resolved through professional discussions. Contractors and inspectors may disagree on the interpretation and need clarification or work through a correction. Those conversations are part of the job. What should never be a part of the job is yelling, cursing, intimidation, or personal attacks. When emotions escalate, communication breaks down and nobody benefits from that. One thing I encourage contractors to remember is that inspectors do not know your full background and you do not know ours. We all come from different training paths, experience, and professional journeys. Making assumptions about someone's qualification, knowledge, or experience based on appearance, gender, age, or any other factor does not help resolve the issue at hand. The focus should always remain on the installation, the code requirements, and the path to compliance. In my experience, the most successful projects happen when the contractors and the inspectors approach each other as professionals working towards the same goal, a safe, code-compliant installation that protects the owners and the public. That's why one of the central themes of this show is to show respect for the trade, respect for the code, respect for the inspection process, and most importantly, respect for one another. If we can improve communication between contractors and inspectors, we can reduce conflict, improve project outcomes, and create a better experience for everyone involved. That's a conversation I look forward to continuing on future episodes of Ask the Lady Electrical Inspector. Open conversations like these help bridge the gap between the inspector and the contractors and remind us that we all have the same goal: safe, code compliant electrical installations that protect people and property. I also want to thank our listeners for your continual support. Whether you are an electrician, contractor, inspector, apprentice, engineer, or property owner, or someone simply interested in the electrical safety, your questions and participation help make this podcast a valuable resource for our industry. Tonight, we discuss the realities of inspections, common reasons project experience delays, permit requirements, code compliance, communication, and the importance of professionalism and mutual respect. My hope is that these conversations help contractors better understand the inspection process and help inspectors better appreciate the challenges contractors face in the field. Remember, inspections are not about finding fault. They are about verifying safety, protecting the public, and ensuring electrical systems are installed in accordance with the adopted codes and standards. The most successful projects happen when contractors and inspectors work together, communicate openly, and focus on finding solutions rather than creating conflict. As always, I encourage you to keep learning, stay current with the code changes, ask questions, and never be afraid to seek clarification before performing the work. A simple question today can prevent a costly correction tomorrow. Please join me for our next episode of Ask the Lady Inspector, where we will continue discussing real-world electrical issues and inspection challenges, code requirements, and practical solutions from both the field and the inspection perspectives. In the meantime, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and other social media platforms under Ask the Lady Electrical Inspector. If you have a question, topic suggestion, or would like to be considered as a future guest, please reach out. Your questions may become the topic of a future episode. Until next time, stay safe, stay professional, keep learning, and remember, electrical safety is everyone's responsibility. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful evening.